All right, good morning, everyone, or hi, whenever you watch this. So today I wanted to share with you a little, let's say, insight that I've had while working in business for for almost either half a decade to a decade. I lose count sometimes, but I've been doing this for a little while, and especially this particular role, I work in a business to business sales role. I've been doing this for over 2 years, and I've seen a lot of stuff myself, and I've seen a lot of stuff in other people that have led people to straight up fail at this job, right? And I think in business in general. And I think what that is, what that one of those things rather is losing yourself in what they need, right? Which I think a lot of people who have savored DE, including myself, fall victim to whenever they have a job, especially a job that's as open-ended as sales, where you have kind of quite a lot of options on what to do with your time, right? So I'll start with myself. When I first started this job, I started it about 2.5 years ago. It was in November. And I remember the first thing I said when I was introduced to the rest of the team was, I'm looking to add value to the team. I want to contribute and I want to help as many people as possible, right? That was my naive DE perspective on what I was going to do in this job, right? Or it's like, I'm going to help you guys and hopefully I can help you with whatever your goals are. And I think for a little while, people were enamored by that. They're like, oh, okay, that's a different perspective. Most people do sales to make money, right? And I supposedly wasn't interested in that. But what ended up happening very soon after, and this really persisted for the past 2 years, it took me a while to learn, but I ended up trying to be really nice to, I have a current customer base. I was trying to be extremely nice to them, which is good, right? Good customer service and all that. But as I went on, I started putting a lot of things on my plate that I really had no business, doing, right? Like I would start asking them questions about, hey, are you getting everything delivered on time? Are you, how are you feeling about the printer? Is anything wrong? And there's not necessarily anything wrong with asking those questions. But I think what I ended up doing was I started prying into situations that I had no business prying into, right? Like, okay, let's say they were having a maintenance issue. Then I'd be like, oh yeah, like I'll totally jump in and I'll try and get you a different technician, or I'll try and get you this. If there was a delivery that they considered to be a delay, I mean, granted, it probably wasn't. It was probably on time from a business standpoint. But to them, they were frustrated. Like, okay, fine, I'll get my manager involved and all this stuff. And it got to the point where 80% of my time at this job was just chasing down these fires, right? I was not putting much time into prospecting. I was not putting time into closing any sales deals that I did have opportunities to close. It all became this like I would call it pointless service, right? Like I would just chase and chase and chase all these little minute things, right? And I would feel good about myself because the customers loved me, but I wasn't making money. I wasn't actually doing my job, like what I was hired to do, which is to, yes, make sure that the customers don't hate us, but also, making, more money and making new customers join our team, right? Similarly, I've watched a lot of people come and go, right? The job that I work in has very high turnover, so there's a lot of people who will start and they'll either quit or they get fired. And I've seen a lot of people quit and I've seen a lot of people get fired. It's not fun, right? But I did notice, I'm not the best at OP typing, but I mean, sometimes DE kind of hits you in the face, right? Where they're always asking you, are you okay? And how are you? Like, I don't want to be disrespectful, but usually people who are savior DI in this job are just focused on their job, which I think they should be, but they're usually not going out of their way to ask me every 5 minutes how I am, right? And so there were quite a few people who've come and gone who have had a similar level of desperation to be useful, let's say, right? And so, there's two examples. I'm not going to give names or any, incriminating details, but the first example was relatively recent. It was someone who worked in sales for a long time and he joined our team, and it was very much, hey, let me see if I can help you. And then it even got to the point where he would get sales deals and he would offer them to me. And I was like, what? like, and for me, I'm DE, to help. But even for me, I was like, why are you giving me this deal? Like, I'm good. Like, I've been working here for a little while. You need to get some numbers on the board yourself. He's like, no, like you've been working here much longer than me, and you seem to need it more. And I was like, okay, that's weird, but and then he ended up, not making it because he pretty much did what I did, just more so internally, where he was always asking all of us what we needed, and he never really focused on what he needed to keep his job, right? And then the other example, which happened a few years ago, is it was another person, and they were more focused than this one guy, but there was still this emphasis of what I was doing, right? Where they would ask all these customers all these questions. And the customer, if you start asking customers if something's wrong, they'll, like, what I've learned is they'll find something that's wrong, right? So all of these prying DE type questions ended up getting her into a huge workload as well. And, she ended up hating the job, right? She quit, thankfully. She didn't get fired, but like she ended up finding something else. But I think part of the reason there was so much frustration is because she pretty much put a lot of work on herself that she had no business putting on her, right? So why am I bringing this up? I bring this up, and I've already mentioned DE, but I believe that in business, there's a time and place for everything, right? There is a time and place where you need to provide that DE customer service. That you need to put yourself in the position of the customer, and you need to go above and beyond. That is completely true. But in a job, whether it's a job like sales or business as a whole, especially if you have your own business, one thing that hopefully you've realized by now is that you don't have that much time, and you don't have that much energy to do all the stuff that you think you can do for the customers, right? And unfortunately, I believe that people who are Savior DE, especially those who have Savior Play DE, they end up putting on a lot of work on their plate because they feel like they're not good enough, or they feel like the customer service that the customer is getting is not good enough. I don't know what it is, but there's some kind of feeling of I need to do more for them that will end up ruining your life, right? So I'm going to go to the checklist. I'm going to make this very, very specific as to what I'm pointing out, and then just giving you some recommendations to basically not do that, because I'm slowly learning that you cannot play the DE game 100% of the time in business. You just cannot. So let me go to the checklist here. So this is my personal checklist. I'll put it in the description when I'm done here. But basically, you have to, so what I'm referring to is this desperation of DE, right? So DE is a human need that is about connection and validation, trying to feel more connected to other people and trying to get more validation from other people. So in a business context, this would mean, well, one, feeling more connected to whether it's your customers, your team, whatever, and then validation of, think of, pats on the back, like, oh, you did a really good job. Thank you for doing that for me. That's kind of the validation in a business context. Now, DE is not only a human need, it's a deciding function, right? So this is not an observation. DE is a proactive choice on your part, okay? Which is you are proactively choosing to be a desperate idiot trying to connect with other people. That's what DE is, right? So there's a little bit more judgment in DE than with, let's say, an observation. Now, in contrast, right, you have to think about it this way. When these are binary, so one thing I need to mention. In OP is a very binary system in the sense of you are doing one thing at the expense of another thing. That's its opposite. Okay, so the opposite of DE is the human need DI, okay, which is about significance and identity. Okay, now in a business context, this would be, hey, valuing your time. I mean, I guess that's for FI, but valuing your time, viewing your time as important, viewing what you do as important, and then your identity of you are fulfilling a certain role in the tribe, right? Reminding yourself of that constantly and doing the right thing, let's say, whether or not you get validation for it, right? That's kind of DI, okay? And so with DE, you have to think about whenever you're doing DE, you're not doing DI, right? So whenever you're trying to connect with other people, you are sacrificing the significance of your time and your role in the tribe. And then whenever you are doing validation, whenever you're looking for those little pats on the back of, hey, good job, you are sacrificing your own identity of what you need to do, usually, okay? Now, one other thing I need to point out is that whenever you're doing DE, you're doing one of two things. You're either doing play, which is about getting things done while learning from the tribe, okay? Or blast, which is you're sharing known information with others. What I'm describing I think is a little bit more on the play side, to be fair, where you are gathering more work for yourself than you really needed to. Okay, especially for people who are in business, maybe you can relate to this. Like I said, you start asking all these questions and you start trying to go above and beyond for the customer, or you start going above and beyond for your boss or whatever, and then you end up working 80 hours a week and you're miserable and you're like, why am I working so much? Well, it's because you put all that work on yourself. No one asked you to do that shit. You asked to do all that shit, right? Now, the alternative, which I think is, in my opinion, slightly more productive, is the blast, right? Where you're sharing known information or, also getting things done. But what I have noticed, and I didn't mention this explicitly, is that even blast can get very needy in business, right? So this would look like over communication, okay? I'm demon blast, so I have the opposite problem. I under communicate, which is a problem. But one thing I have seen is that I've seen this in my boss, I think, and I think I've seen this in several other people that have come and gone, is that sometimes their form of neediness is to over communicate. Yeah, like right now our company's going through hard times. Yeah, there's a supply chain issue. Yeah, there's this. Yeah, there's that, right? Now, a healthy amount of that is needed, which I need to learn, which is you need to communicate, right? Because otherwise people are going to be like, why'd you ghost us? We have shit that's wrong, right? So there's a place for blast, but there is still that neediness of if you do too much of it, you are then putting yourself in a position where you're getting yourself in more trouble than you need to, right? There's such a thing as over communication, right? Especially when it comes to customers, because the moment you start communicating doubt, especially where it's like, something's wrong and you're over communicating that, you might lose customers that way. I've seen that happen, right? They're like, okay, well, if you're in such a bad spot, why are we gonna move forward with you? Now, in both cases, let's go back to the human need. In both cases, the core problem is this addiction. You're addicted to being connected with a bunch of people. Why, right? You're addicted to getting validation from your boss or from your customers. No, stop. And so what I'm recommending, I guess, and this is more so for people who are savor DE, is all the work that you think you need to do, you probably can get away with doing half as much. And I know that's gonna sound wrong. I know it's gonna sound bad. That's like, how dare you when, isn't the customer always first and always right? No, because that's harsh to say. Sometimes you need to prioritize yourself and you need to prioritize your job above getting all of these random little things done, right? Whether it's on the TE domain or the FE domain, it doesn't matter. There's a time and a place for you to say, hey, I've helped you enough. Now I only have like 8 hours in the day, or let's say you're an entrepreneur, you're working around the clock, but you still have a certain amount of energy. I only have a certain amount of energy to help you, and then I got to get back to moving forward with my path, right? Because otherwise, you're going to be in the situation I'm in, you're going to be in the situation that all these people that I've seen get fired or quit in, is that you're either going to get miserable and you're going to end up resenting the people that you were helping because they're draining all your energy, or you're going to put so much work on your plate that you're going to fail. Because no one can work that hard. I don't care who you are, right? And so what I'm recommending is DI. Now, there are 2 ways to do DI, right? Unsurprisingly. So much like with DE, there are 2 ways. There's 2 ways to do DI. The first one is sleep, right? Which is a little bit more active. I think some people in the community have kind of considered sleep and play to be the decider animals. So this is more proactive on your part, right? Where you need to decide who you are in the tribe, right? And in a business context, you need to remind yourself not only what your job is, right? Let's say you have a job, or let's say you're an entrepreneur. Not only do you need to remind yourself of what that role actually requires of you, but then you also need to remind yourself of the type of person you want to be from a character standpoint. Okay, so I'll give you a few examples, right? So let's say in my job, right? So if you wanted to take my job, go for it, right? You have to remind yourself, and maybe mine's a little bit more SI, so I apologize, but okay, what is my actual job description? What was I actually hired to do, right? In my case, the vast majority of it is to bring in new business, maintain the relationships of the current customers enough so that they don't leave, but then also you need to hit a certain quota. That's ultimately what I'm measured on. That's my identity in this tribe, right? My identity is you are the person that brings in $500,000 a year in revenue. Okay, and that's your identity. And for me, especially with Sleep Last, I need to constantly remind myself on an hourly basis personally, okay, getting that identity requirement satisfied, right? Am I actually selling 500K through my actions right now? And that's me personally. You may have a different method. Yours may be more abstract. I get that. But that's the first thing you need to do. You need to sleep, process, and review who you are in the tribe. Because that way that's gonna prevent you from wasting time, solving dumb problems. Because you don't have time for that. The second way you need to do it is through consume. So consume is a bit more passive. It's a information animal, so it's a little bit more passive. And in this one, is defined as taking in new information that you are interested in or learning via research. Okay, and in the business context, what this would look like is, learn more things about what you need to do. Right, gather new information that may help you to be this identity in the world. So again, let me give you an example from my job. So let's say you wanted to take my job, right? Again, go for it. Like, seriously. What you would want to do, not only during the, let's say, the interview stage, but you would want to do this throughout your career, which is something that I do, which I am proud of, my saviors, is occasionally look up things that you don't know about your identity. So for me, it's like, okay, let's say I need to sell $500,000. I don't know the first thing, how do I do that, right? So one thing I tend to do is I will Google, okay, what are top businesses doing in sales? I will do that, right? I'll look up, some people that I admire, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Jay-Z, right? People who are, Rihanna, people who are dominating in the business world and in sales, which is part of my identity. And I'm learning from them. I'm like, okay, what did they do? Okay, so for example, one thing I think I learned is Jeff Bezos has certain heuristics that he uses to make decisions. And one of the biggest heuristics he uses is the regret minimization framework, which is if he looked back on his life when he was 80, is he gonna regret any of the decisions that he made or didn't make today, right? Now, this is consumed because for me, I wouldn't have thought of that. Even, it's not in my job description anywhere. I wouldn't have thought that in a million years. So I had to go out and gather that new information about how I can do my job better, right? Now, again, this could be SE consume, TI consume, it doesn't matter, right? So it's gonna look different for you, but the principle is the same. You need to take time aside and gather new things about your identity so that you can be a better version of that identity moving forward, okay? And so, in conclusion, I'm let me look you guys in the face. Don't do the DE thing in business. I swear to God, don't do it, because it doesn't work. That's my TE. It just does not work sustainably. What I mean by that, don't go out of your way to please every single customer. You're gonna have customers that no matter, you could be the best DE person in the world and they're still gonna hate you, they're still gonna nitpick, they're still gonna complain, that's gonna drain you, that's gonna drain your time, energy. It's not worth it, okay? So DE, don't overdo it. Let me rephrase it. Don't go out of your way to find problems, okay? Especially if you're not even doing your job, right? If you're not even doing what you were hired to do, maybe you should wait to do that before you go and do all this extra credit stuff, okay? And then similarly, with the blast, don't over communicate. There's a time and place for blast, but don't over communicate every single little problem that you have, that your team has, that your business has. You don't want to do that, right? Because long term, what that's going to do is you're going to lose people, you're going to lose faith from the customers or from whoever you're talking to, because you oversold the information, right? And then again, I'm recommending, especially for Save Your DE, do more DI in business. Do what you were actually hired to do. Do what your company promised it was gonna do, and focus on that, right? And then if you do want to go above and beyond, like I said, find out what identity, let's maybe one more ideal identity that you want to aspire towards, and then chip away towards that. And then if that happens to have DE in there, great. But you need to measure yourself on the identity that you've chosen and that you were hired to become, okay? And so that's about it. I might share future videos about how I personally do that. I mean, I'll give you one example from let's say on the more abstract end. One thing that I do from a sleep standpoint is this is very cheesy, but I will do this, especially when I'm working from home. I'll put on little environment things, so this is a Batman little ambiance or whatever. I'll put on certain music to remind me to be a certain identity. I'll set aside time throughout the day to remind myself to reprioritize what I'm hired to do and things like that. And that helps me, right? I'm not saying that's you, but that's my method. I have a few more methods, and if you're interested, I could share those. But long story short is you need to find your own way because it's DI, it's personal. But I'm telling you, focus on getting your identity, meeting your identity needs, right? Becoming the type of person that you need to be and that you've always wanted to be. And then if you have extra time, spare time, then go out of your way to help other people. Because yes, the customer service is great, but the problem is, much like me and much like all these people who got fired, basically, is people overdo it with Save Your DE. We overdo it. We try and find problems that aren't there, right? And then we're the ones who end up miserable. And so I'm trying to like discourage you from going there, okay? So hope you're doing well. Hope that helps you to some degree. If you have any questions, definitely leave it in the comments. I know I'm not the most, let's say, eloquent speaker. I'm not the most clear speaker. You know, I ramble and I may make no sense sometimes. So if you need clarification, feel free to leave it in the comments. I do also have a snug. Some people have been benefiting from that in the sense of, if you need more quality time or if you want to share some things that you don't want to put in the comment, feel free to book a session and I'll see what I can do to help you. Okay. But other than that, I'm going to get back to work, get back to my identity and try and make this money, Hope you guys do the same. And I will see you in the next video that I make. Take care.